So welcome everyone again on this side of Teams. Hopefully unbugged this time. The Square Table will be about diversity in cybersecurity, and this session is hosted and organized by ISACA in Netherlands chapter in collaboration with Noria, the Netherlands Internal Audit Institute. As we've mentioned, please keep yourself on mute. Please turn off your camera. Make sure that you have your first name and last name correctly, so that we can at least assign you the CPEs if you stay at least for 15 minutes. The presentation will be recorded and the slides will be shared on the ISACA website. And please, if you have any questions, please put them on the chat. Tag them with #question at the beginning of the question, and these will be answered at the end of the session for this evening. Very quickly, as we're already very late, the announcements, the ISACA Netherlands chapter announcements. Next week, we'll have a Square Table on the nuts and bolts of achieving security compliance. And, one of the presenters will be actually here this evening. On the 2nd of October, we'll have a Square Table on preparing the human firewall against the threat landscape, and a roundtable that is in person, Eindhoven, on the 25th of September. Top 5 lessons learned from defending Microsoft 365, or at least to have it bug-free during Square Tables. The event is like a Belgium chapter and Netherlands chapter, along with Antwerp Management School, and with cooperation of the Cybersecurity Coalition. And this will be on the 14th of October, integrating IT governance for a secure future. Then please make sure that you register to our risk events. And this will be on the 6th of November in Bussum. Hope to see you there. Also, we also have the Security Congress 2024, Expect the Unexpected, also on the 9th of October 2024. I'm not sure, Ramzi, if you're there, how we with the seats. I'm not sure that I guess that we are still not full, but first come, first served.
I think we're running out of tickets, so if you are interested, please go ahead and book as quick as possible. It's 9th of October. Also, I see the risk event. I think maybe the slide was skipped, but the risk event is 6th of November. We're also running out of tickets, so please go ahead and as quick as possible get your ticket.
Up is up, so please make sure you get your seats. That is for me this evening. You already put up with me for a while now. I have the honor to introduce our speakers for tonight. Where are they? Let me see if I can. Can you please unmute and put your camera on, please?
Hello. Good evening.
Yes, we're here.
We're here. Yeah.
Okay, let me just.
Can you also hear
stop
us?
sharing? Yes,
Yeah.
I can.
Okay.
Brilliant. So please, if you can, Morgan, Yuri, if you can, Morgan Tuderen and Yuri Boppert will present this evening. The floor is yours.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much also for the quick fix for this small interruption. I just wanted to check with Morgan because we are doing this together, and I wanted to make sure that she is also able to see the slides and perhaps also take over control, because I think it's in this session it's possible to take control, but we'll see. If it's not possible, then there's no problem. Okay.
Yes, I can see the slides. No control, but I can see it.
Super, excellent. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm here with Morgan. We're going to introduce us a little bit later on. So we have prepared a talk for 45 minutes. We'll try to speed it up a little bit due to the hiccup. And we have a Q&A afterwards. But feel free to put your questions in the chat during our presentation. We are going to talk about diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity and exploring defining core practices that benefit the effectiveness of cybersecurity teams. And basically, we related to this publication that was published recently, last month, on ISACA journal in the US. Mainly because it's a scientific research that Morgan and I did, and ISACA journal in the US also found it a very interesting topic to publish. We did it together with Professor Bas van Gils, also a colleague at the Antwerp Management School. So my name is Yuri Bobbert. I'm an academic director at Antwerp Management School and a research supervisor. And next to that, I'm CEO of Annovi.ai. And I'm here with Morgan, and Morgan is going to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Jotruno. I'm 24 years old. I work at Dux Group. I'm a consultant there, and Dux Group is a small consultancy firm based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And we help organizations regarding information management, business process management, data, security, and privacy. And I'm currently working in the domain of business process management and information management. And maybe interesting backstory how I met Yuri is in the past I also wrote a paper about the role and influence of women in the information technology sector. And via Bas van Gils, who I wrote it with, I met Yuri Bobbert. And we were very interested in exploring the concept of diversity in the domain of cybersecurity. Hence, we did a collaboration on this project.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, yeah? So let's
It is. So let me start off with a hypothetical situation. Let's say if you stand out and you don't feel included in an environment. You see that everyone is different than you, and again, you don't feel included, you feel different. So it doesn't feel like an inclusive environment, and it doesn't feel like you can reach your full potential because people see you different. And how could being different be a very valuable thing in cybersecurity rather than a liability? So that's the starting point we want to start this presentation with. Another aspect we would like to start talking about is that if we talk about the notion of diversity and inclusion in cybersecurity, we see a lot of criticism for only just exploring the topic. And especially in a homogeneous workforce, and a lot of people have the perception that, let's say, the cybersecurity realm is a very homogeneous workforce. Exploring diversity and inclusion might jeopardize it. And how can we attract the right professionals to increase the cybersecurity capability of organizations while we have such a large resistance at sometimes? That was also one of the main factors why we started this research project. So keep these two things in mind while we continue.
Yeah, we refer here a little bit to the angry white old man that is overpopulated. And I'm entitled to say that because I'm also old. Well, I'm not gray but I'm white, and but I represent one of this population, and Morgan is representing the other part of the population. Okay.
And at the same time, as we look at the cybersecurity threat landscape, we see a very fast and dynamic revolution. As you can tell in this video, what are the current threats and how do they arise throughout time? Just take a moment to look. So what we see is that the end user is still a very central topic within the entire threat landscape. And of course, other topics increase over the years, but the end user, the human aspect, is still increasingly important. And in our paper we wrote, and for ISACA, which was also published in ISACA, we used a work of cyber researcher Rehman. And every year, the researcher visualizes the entire domain of cybersecurity and the responsibilities attached to the cybersecurity professional. And what we can see is that it's the original work from Raymond is very expensive, as in there are so many areas and sub branches. And what we did is we made a more concise version, which you can see in this overview. And the landscape is, like I said, it's very comprehensive. It reaches from, let's say, security architecture to governance in general, let's say identity and access management, but also risk management. And each of these green areas, they delve into different sub branches. So that means that the domain is not only very expensive, but it also requires a lot of in-depth skill for each of these areas. So given that the domain of cybersecurity is so comprehensive, at the same time, what we also see is that a lot of HR professionals have difficulties in attracting the right professionals with the right skills, and the pool is just very scarce. So when we put these two together, while also looking for, again, the right skill set, how do we deal with these challenges? And in the next slide, if you go to the next slide, Yuri, then we have a new version. So the prior version we used was the 2024 version. Now we see the 2025 version, and we see 3 new green borders here, which means that the domain of cybersecurity is not only expanding, but I think we can safely assume that the skills we need for the new cybersecurity domain is also increasing, while knowing that the HR challenges are still very present and only increasing.
Yeah, so this counts for both, let's say, the leadership role as well as the roles in the teams. More and more teams are needed to address the work that's ahead of us. And that also requires something from us as leaders. So, for example, chief security officers. And a leader can have a natural tendency. For example, the chief security officer can have, for example, a focus on vision, inspiration, or transformative change. And that becomes important when we want to enact change. We call this the white person. And we refer here to the colors of Callaway. So white means that you focus on vision and inspiration. Yellow, for example, focuses on influences, power and dynamics, and negotiation skills, sometimes needed in perhaps governmental environments where politics is important. Red persons, most of the time extrovert, focus on motivation and teamwork and on human resources. In cybersecurity, we also need blue people, perhaps, specifically in the field of audit and assurance, where planning and control and logical analysis are important, and consistency in the work is important. So blue is an important profession. And last but not least, green. Green represents that we want to learn and develop and we want to innovate. Well, most of the time also what I've seen in my personal experience is that you need a diverse type of people in order to achieve your goal. But it also requires for you as a chief security officer, as a leader in the profession, to adapt yourself to a specific situation and use people where they are very powerful. So for example, use people that are more extrovert or red in specific change assignments. So if you are, for example, need to do a change, then you can hire a red person. So it's important to have a diverse team. And you're open to reflections, and you're open to countervailing power and feedback of others. We sometimes, when we are not open to that, refer to what we call the IKEA effect. The IKEA effect is the cognitive bias in which consumers place a disproportional high value on products they are partially created themselves. So the IKEA effect contributes to the sunk cost effect, which occurs when managers continue to devote resources to sometimes failing projects that they have invested in themselves. And the effect is also related to the not invented here syndrome that we perhaps know, where managers disregard good ideas developed elsewhere in favor of internal developed ideas. So if there is no reflection or no countervailing power, the leader becomes more and more unconsciously incompetent. what Johari in the Johari window refers to as, again, unconsciously incompetent. Let me give you an example of leadership authenticity. So when people lose their authenticity, when they are the leader of a specific situation, organization, or in this case, a country. So when Geert Wilders started his political career, he was quite right in his thoughts and his expressions. He was not afraid to polarize groups, and he offended certain ethnic groups or take a stand against specific minorities. And for a long time, he was the opposing party. But at some time, and some moment in time, he gained more voters and was in the position to lead the coalition, since he was elected as one of the biggest parties with 1 million votes, representing 17% of the entire population in the Netherlands. And when he was asked to form a coalition, he just sailed the wind of the parties, and he lost his authenticity on standpoints such as the Netherlands leaving the EU, the Nexit. Since his focus was more and more becoming the prime minister. He could smell the tower of power, het torentje. He could smell it. But unfortunately, his chance has been given to somebody else, and Geert Wilders has fallen back into his old habits of offending and taking his own course. He does what suits him best and even visits external presidents without informing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs knowing about his visits. So it becomes hard to count on him. Who is he? Can we rely on such a leader? And does the leader have enough countervailing power and external reflection to be corrected on his acts? INSEAD Professor Manfred Ketz de Vries examined narcissistic leaders and their path to success. He studied how people lose their authenticity when reaching top positions and how they became more self-centered than narcissistic, less open to others and less susceptible to feedback. The question remains, and if we could stay open-minded towards others and be open to learn from people with another racial or gender or neural background, even if we are the leader. So in our research, we examined a lot of these perspectives gained from the INSEAD pool.
Yeah, so like Yuri explains that the role of leadership or management is very important in this topic, because due to leadership, you lead by example. And like I said in the beginning, we were very curious about what if we research something about a strategy based on diversity to improve the cybersecurity capability. So we used this onion diagram, we made our own version, and our hypothesis is that a strategy based on diversity and inclusion can help address the challenges in cybersecurity to attract the right cybersecurity professionals, so we can address more cybersecurity challenges. So let me zoom more into this onion diagram. So we have actually 3 main dimensions. You start at the personality, that's inherently who we are. Then we can have some diversity factors in the internal dimension, in the external dimension, and the organizational dimension. So let me pick a few examples. So if I look at the internal dimension, I can take my age as example. I'm 24. I'm a woman. I'm from Javanese Surinamese descent. And these are inherently not changeable. Then if I look at my external dimension, for example, I was born and raised in Rotterdam, an urban city. I have an educational background from a university. I did a bachelor and a master's degree in both in our field. My work experience is now in consulting, and maybe someone who works in a different work field looks at things differently, or someone who has a different age than me looks at things differently, because I'm sure Yuri has a different perspective on things because he's older than I, for example. And then as last, the organizational dimension, let's say my management status. Last year I was a junior consultant, now I am a media consultant, and I think I can bring a lot more to the table right now as a media consultant compared to last year when I was a junior consultant. And we find it important to mention that if we look at diversity, we should also take intersectionality into account, because I'm not just my age. I'm not just 24. I'm not just a woman. I'm actually a combination of all these different things, such as that Yuri is a combination of all these different things which make up our identity. So we were very curious on taking these diversity factors into account and how they relate to attracting more professionals in the cybersecurity field. In our research, an interesting thing was that a lot of people thought that neurodiverse individuals are very strong in the hacking field, and that we should pay more attention to maybe hiring people who are wired differently in a neurodiverse manner. Do you have anything to add to this, Yuri?
Well, yeah, we had during our investigation that we did amongst a couple of experts, we had somebody from the Ministry of Defense who basically said, well, we hired in the past based upon physical expression. So we looked at physical behavior of people, if they were able to, for example, pass the physical test, because that was part of the important culture and atmosphere within the defense department. But nowadays, war and also customs, for example, the Marseillais, is more and more relying on technical capabilities where these recruiting skills are not suitable anymore. Because nowadays it could be way more better that you hire, for example, somebody with a specific neural wiring that is, for example, wearing a hoodie, perhaps has a little bit of overweight, but is very good in analytical skills and very good in a specific way of investigating devices or investigating systems that are more and more nowadays used to attack countries or penetrate our borders. And this was interesting because that means that the entire recruiting process of the Ministry of Defense needed to change. And that's also something that we wanted to contribute with this research paper and also with our talk, is to develop something that organizations can use to scrutinize their own recruiting and HR process in order to recruit more diverse teams and, in the end, create more effective teams. So we also looked at specific roles in the future. And so you saw these threats emerging in the previous slides, and you saw also the change of landscape, which is quite dynamic. And at some point, new legislations and new insights also determine that we need roles that are not invented now or not hired or needed now, but perhaps are needed in the future. By the fact that we pump around a lot of data and we copy and we create what we call a lot of rogue and dark data, perhaps requires that we need to have a data trash engineer, somebody that is fully equipped in trashing old data, getting rid of old data. Another one is due to all the increase of the use of AI in our processes and also in our business environments, requires that we also need to have somebody that's capable to open up the black box and audit that. Keep in mind that, for example, SWIFT, the International Money Clearance Institute, at some point now requires 3,000 new CSP auditors, what we refer to as Cybersecurity SWIFT program, to audit the SWIFT gateways. 3,000. So that requires a lot of new type of professionals that are capable of auditing these types of technologies. And what you see, for example, in the last one is that the Chief Information Security Officer nowadays manages more and more an extended enterprise with a lot of contractors and subcontractors, where you basically want to orchestrate your service level agreements, key performance indicators with these parties, where you basically become an orchestrator, where you orchestrate the things that you find important for your organization into your supply chain. So what we basically established at the end of our research paper is what we refer to as a recruiting for diversity self-assessment. So we took all the important elements for recruiting a diverse workforce, specifically focusing on cybersecurity, and took all of these elements, there are 19 elements, to scrutinize yourself, so basically assess yourself and your organization. So, for example, we looked at, are you capable of detecting and identifying neurodiversity, and are you aware of it to identify neurodiversity and see the good points of that? The fact that people are wired in a different way makes them perhaps very suitable in analytical tasks to do. Another one is, for example, look at the background of people. Specific backgrounds can be very contributional for cybersecurity. For example, if somebody is what we just referred to as is a blue character and perhaps comes from accounting and wants to pursue a career in cybersecurity, those skills of a blue person, being consistent, punctual, analytical, can be very contributional for cybersecurity, specifically in the assurance domain. So we have established 19 of these traits where you can basically assess yourself and determine, can we hire a diverse and inclusive oriented workforce, and can we compile the team that we need for the future? We basically want to encourage also organizations into looking more into these backgrounds, but also establish a little bit more of curiosity. So let me leave you with this. If you walk into a room and someone else is completely different from yourself, what do you appreciate most about that person that you don't have or can't do? Think about it. Let that sink in and think about it. Basically, because we want to encourage this curiosity, because that opens the door to a broader perspective. And a diverse mix of backgrounds and skills combined with an eagerness to learn fosters also the innovation. And providing this curiosity and an inclusive, safe work environment improves the team effectiveness. Diversity brings new perspectives, and inclusion makes people feel part of the journey or a shared purpose. So we relied on a couple of articles that we'll share afterwards. And on behalf of Morgan, I would like to thank you. Morgan, perhaps you have something to add here?
Yes, I would also like to thank everyone for coming to our presentation, and maybe a little less note on the self-assessment for diversity and inclusion. We indeed included 19 rows, but let's say if you want to use it yourself, you don't immediately have to start using all 19. You can also make a filter in the most important things for you or your organization. So that's also a small little note I wanted to make to that. But other than that, thank you, and feel free to share your thoughts or questions on this topic, because just for us, this was the first time doing a research in this subject. So we would like to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I see we have quite a lot of questions, Morgan, so perhaps we can answer a couple of them. I don't know if we can answer them all, but let's see what the questions are.
Exactly, thank you. Let's see, the first one is from Rash. How does cultural context add to this? I am missing that in your perspective overview. So we were at the stage of the onion graph. For example, cronyism is more common in some cultures, while nepotism or merit are more common in others. Actually, this is a question where I also resound, because you also have the distinction between shame cultures and guilt cultures. How does that fit in your schematics?
Yeah, Morgan, do you want to take that, or shall I answer?
It's a good question. Yuri, I suppose I start with answering my first part, and you can add to my answer. I think if we look at the cultural context, then culture on its own was definitely a part of the onion diagram, and of course we approached this research from, perhaps I would say, a mainly Western perspective, but maybe there are in in other cultural surroundings that they approach diversity in a much different way compared to we do. Maybe diversity and inclusion is already such a vast part of how they approach hiring practices. But I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, Arash.
Yeah. Perhaps also to add to that, to the question of Arash, because we looked at culture background, because we've looked at multiple perspectives. So in the paper we've basically addressed them all. Personally, we had a lot of debates with also the experts judging all these items. And one of the cultural elements that we also addressed was, for example, the difference between Europe, Asia, and the US, and the fact that the US is more focused on the culture in the US, and that's not, let's say, the culture of tribes as we mean, but more the culture of, for example, lawsuit and class litigations. Definitely influences more and more Europe. So that's an important one, because that also makes your own people more aware of, if you're dealing with perhaps parties in the US, you are more susceptible to, for example, class acts, lawsuit. And also on the other hand, that I personally also experienced that, for example, working in Asia doesn't necessarily, if you tell something there as the chief of the department, that people in the organization actually do what you ask them to do, simply because if we talk English or we write English, for example, simple example was a policy, and you write a policy in English, then they need to translate that into their own characters. And then a lot got lost in translation. And that means basically for all cultures that you make use of other types of alphabets. I also see another question. I'll hear from Arash later on if the answer is okay. So I see another question from Guy Smith about.
How does these threats evolve? I think it evolved for a vCISO, that is a virtual CISO. Is it different, or are the vCISOs more or less vulnerable?
Yeah, so virtual CISO, it's a good point, because basically the virtual CISO requires, virtual CISO we mean is a part-time CISO that helps organizations into establishing a security program, runs it, and then goes to the next customer. So they do this on a part-time basis. Where I think it's important, these traits, is that in order to enter an organization, you most of the time look at, okay, what kind of structures and processes do I see in my organization or in my customer environment? This now becomes more evident, because you're now also looking at, okay, what type of people and what type of culture and relational mechanisms do we encounter in this organization? Is it, for example, a very hierarchical organization? So you definitely can use also this assessment that we've developed to identify and to determine what kind of organization is this and how susceptible are they for hiring the right people. Morgan, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. I do have a question about neurodiversity. That can be, of course, approached by bigger organizations. However, how do you suggest that small organizations can make sure that neurodiversity is considered when hiring and managing people?
Well, if I think about neurodiversity, what I see lately is that it starts at the individual itself. So a lot of people are starting to self-diagnose them for neurodiversity, which is a great thing, of course. And how an organization can adapt to it is, I believe, taking neurodiversity more into account. So let's say people with autism or ADHD, they work in different ways than someone who is supposedly wired in a normal way. And that can manifest in different ways during work.
Definitely, and personally, I do have really a good experience or bad experience. That is not communicating, not being able to communicate with somebody when using sarcasm. And a long time later, then I found out that the person had Asperger's syndrome, so he didn't actually understand sarcasm, which is, of course, something that it would be much easier to handle, or at least I would modify my behavior towards it if I knew that. However, then you enter the realm of privacy, right? Because personality, as an employee, the employee may choose not to share that information. So those personality traits, right?
True, and I think this is also in smaller organizations, and then perhaps the cultures there to be open about it and to share your situation. It all depends, to my opinion, also to the leadership. If there's an open culture where you're safe to share that, and then people are also more likely to understand why you respond in a certain way. I like the example that you gave, because and I think that the biggest example that we see is Elon Musk. He's very open about his different way of wiring, and but then you also see, okay, this is somebody that acts and reacts in a specific way. And I think if it's in a smaller organization, because that was the question, in a small organization, if we are open and transparent and discuss it and talk about it, then we're also more able to anticipate on it. But we personally experience, Morgan and I, also that if you have a group of people that are very open about it, you can benefit in a way, more better way than if you're not open about it.
Yes.
So sorry, Morgan, sorry.
No, it's okay. And to add on, Yuri, I want to put emphasis as well on having a safe space. So being open, but also having a safe space in order to be open. So for example, let's say if you have your lunch break on work, some people don't want to participate in lunch break, and that has nothing personally to do with the coworkers, but they just need some quiet alone time. And maybe that's more common in neurodiverse individuals. And rather than taking it as an offense, you can also maintain an open and safe space in order to talk about it and give the individual space to let's go, for example, go on your lunch break on your own.
But that applies not only to cybersecurity, correct, Morgan? That applies in an organization overall.
Yeah, it's more general indeed. But it was just an example which.
No, definitely, especially because we know, right? We're in cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. We know that we're not easy people to deal with. So we're always looking for the next threat, and that comes with the job. But how can you actually, in terms of the cybersecurity roadmap, or in practical terms, how can you make sure that you take into account that diversity, and you can actually make sure that that inclusion adds value to your roadmap? I'm thinking of, for example, would you say that, considering the persona or the curriculum of a specific staff member, that person should be assigned to different tasks rather than or being, for example, a BISO, somebody that should be assigned being a business information security officer, because they are more a people person than somebody that is an analyst. Does it go to that practicality, or would you model it some other way?
I really love this question. This is a very good one, because this was part of our discussion earlier, and I'm going to reveal a couple of things here. So I was CISO for UWV, and in UWV, we established a security function with the BISO. And the BISO at that point they were working in business units, but because of the fact that you are going to establish a new function, means that you also need to have people that are able to make explicit why this function is needed, make explicit what the relevance and the benefit of such a role, and also what tasks are required. So you need to have somebody that is a little bit in red in nature. And then we had an example of a person that we hired, and we ideally set the profile. We wanted to have a red person, so not red in color, but red in the mindset and behavior, because we want to have an extrovert person. And at some point, and this might sound a little bit discriminating, we said, well, ideally we want to have a lady there because she has finesse and she has empathy to communicate it well in a soft organization as UWV is. And we eventually ended up hiring a red lady, and not the fact that she was, the coincidence was that she actually had red hair, and so that made it even more funny. But the good thing was that she was really capable of communicating. So she had completely other skills because she didn't know anything about the profession of cybersecurity or implementing frameworks, etc. But she was really good in communicating why this was relevant in this situation of the organization. And the only thing which you can do is to seek for, okay, what do we need in this specific situation? And it can be, for example, then somebody with Asperger's or HDD that has very strong analytical skills, or for example, can be very fierce, because sometimes you also need to have people that are fierce in, if you want to establish something, it's good that people have less empathy in a situation. And that's the thing, how we looked at it. So that was also part of the discussion that we had during the research, where we basically exchanged stories with each other of what we encountered and how we were treated ourselves.
And again, and I just remembered the question from Arash. You were looking for somebody red. Well, considering the national cultural differences, I can see that there's a blatant difference between Portuguese and Dutch, for example, where we are much more loud. Let's say we're louder than the Dutch, or more expressive than the Dutch. That also affects how you perceive that personality. Which is maybe we're getting at the end of our time, but considering that you hired a red lady for that role, I'm going to ask her a very, very dangerous question. So please, if you don't want to answer, please let me know. What is your view then? Where do you draw the line between making sure that your team is diverse and inclusive, and positive discrimination?
Yeah, that's a very a good direct question. So I personally reason that because, by the way, I'm also, the last time somebody asked me also, what do you think of diversity and what do you think of inclusion? I said, well, basically, I'm the wrong person to ask that, because I've never been discriminated, because I'm very traditional in this industry. I'm white, I'm old, I'm a man, I have gray hair, I fit to complete the box. So I'm not discriminated ever in my entire life. So I'm more careful now, to be honest, because I also, when we had the discussion also with Morgan, I was also realizing for myself, hey, by doing that, you also do a sort of an excluding people, like in this case, perhaps a male that can also do that job, a red male. But in this case, we were lucky enough to find a female, which is rare in our profession, who had red hair. So we can also make, she actually did make comments about herself. I think the people that are in this call that also worked at UWV at that moment know exactly who I'm talking about, because she was quite outspoken. But I
no
think
names, please. Privacy related. Please, no names.
if it serves the purpose, in this case, and it did, I think then it is okay to do it, as long as you are not, let's say, ruling out people or offending people, because I think that's a very wrong thing to do.
Exactly, because then we enter the question of parity, and then parity may come in collusion with merit. And it's a very thin line, right? And what do you advise, what is your advice, both of you? What's your advice for whomever is building at this moment cybersecurity teams? What is the utmost importance when building that team? So first rule.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the last part of your question, Daniela?
Sorry, the first rule, so the top rule, to consider diversity, inclusion, and the balance there too, when you're building a cybersecurity team in your organization. What is the rule of thumb that we can take away?
I can start by saying this. We also wrote down in our paper that we acknowledge that the right skills and the right knowledge will always be important, especially in such a specific domain as in cybersecurity. That will never change. Maybe an additional rule of thumb is to reevaluate and adjust the HR practices by recruiting the professionals. That's my perspective on it. What do you think, Yuri?
Yeah, I think it all has to do with the task. And so if you're an individual in the team and you have a task, then reflect on yourself, okay, what do I need in order to be successful in my task? And I think it all has to do with a manager. So if you have a manager, or the CISO has a manager, so everybody in the end has somebody that you need to tell what you did or why you did something. It's okay, what's your task? Regardless if you are a ZZ payer or a manager or somebody in the team, what's the task that you need to do, and how can I organize myself to become successful? And if it means that you need to have somebody, because you know it from yourself perhaps, as a sort of a self-assessment, to understand, okay, I need somebody that can encourage me, for example, or I need somebody that is very critical to me or very direct. I heard you use the word parenting.
Parity as in equality, a percentage between men and women.
Yeah, because I think parenting, that's something else. Because we just did a research on parentification, which is also something that a lot of CISOs also have to deal with, because that's when you, for example, in a hierarchical situation with either somebody that gives you an assignment or your manager, that sometimes you become submissive and you are going to do things that are not close to your heart. And I think that if you encountered such a situation, that's not good. So I would say most important thing is assess yourself, what do you need, and then seek in the organization and with your peers and with your teammates, am I really going to flourish here? Am I going to be happy, and am I going to laugh with my colleagues, and I'm going to book the best results? Unfortunately, in recruiting process, you're not allowed to talk to your peers. You're only allowed to talk to a recruiter or HR, and if you're lucky enough with your manager or the manager above that, but it's very strict, and I think it's a bad thing. I would encourage people to just walk around for a week, smell the smell of the place, feel how it is, and then take a decision.
That is very, very, very valuable, Yuri. Unfortunately, and considering the time, I just have one more quick question, which could lead to hours of discussion. We are seeing the other way around. The trend is the other way around, because we already have AI systems filtering CVs right now. So what is, let's say in 30 seconds, considering that and considering that we add value by being diverse, what is your takeaway? So if I need to remember something really important from this session in 30 seconds, what's your advice? Either Morgan or Yuri or both?
Ladies first and last.
My 30 seconds takeaway. Well, my takeaway is still the last slide. I hope you have a wider perspective now and a more curiosity towards other people.
And Yuri, do you want to add anything? That was really shorter than 30 seconds.
Very fair point. So curiosity to people, and perhaps also curiosity to AI. So what are we doing here with the AI? And is it harming people, or is it ruling people out? And the best way, and this is the excellent population that we're talking to now, is they all have a critical mindset. look at, okay, what's coming out and does it harm anyone?
Indeed, precious. Thank you very much, Yuri. Morgan, do you want to give some teasers for tomorrow, next week?
Yeah, so tomorrow we have a specific, or I do something about the virtual CISO and the virtual DPO, because that's an emerging role, growing very fast, specifically in the US, and also because of the scarcity of a lot of talent and the new generation that wants to work in another way, wants to have flexible work hours, want to earn more money with less work, put it bluntly. That's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And next week, we're going to talk about the massive collaboration that we did with all financial institutes in the Netherlands and the advisory that we gave to the Dutch Central Bank, DNB. And I'll do that together with Kartik Rajagopalan and Erwin Laros from. So we'll hope to see you next week.
Wonderful. It was really something precious to take away. This session was. Thank you everyone for attending, and well, see you next week. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Thank you, Daniela.
Bye.